Have you already registered for the live recording of episode 200 on November 30th? If not, head over to theeffectivestatistician.com and register there. If you're already on the email list, then good, you'll get that invite. Also, are you early in your career? Are you maybe a student that is more advanced in the career? Then also register for the workshops that we have, the 3-hour interactive fun workshops that we have to boost your career as a statistician on 1st of December. Just head over to the Effective Statistician and register there. And please tell your colleagues about it as well. You're listening to the Effective Statistician podcast, the weekly podcast with Alexander Schacht, Benjamin Pieske, and Sam Gardner, designed to help you reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients without becoming overwhelmed by work. Today we are talking about the lack of buffer in complex systems and what this has to do with your day-to-day work. Some time ago, I was seeing something about why, train systems break down. And it was from a mathematical perspective very, very interesting. And there was some further research about it then that was, generally about complex system. And this episode is about this topic because we work in complex systems. We can't see what's going on. We can't foresee what will change. There's always something, new coming. There's projects dying. There's updates coming. There's, whatsoever. And, your supervisor might chime in and give you a new task. So we are working in a very, very complex environment. And what does buffer have to do with it? Well, obviously, the more buffer is in the system, the better it works. But do we really plan for it? How much buffer do we need? Stay tuned for these topics to be discussed later on. I'm producing this podcast in association with PSI, a community dedicated to leading and promoting the use of statistics within the healthcare industry for the benefit of patients. Join PSI today to further develop your statistical capabilities with access to the ever-growing video-on-demand content library, free registration to all PSI webinars, and much, much more. Head over to psiweb.org to learn more about PSI activities and become a PSI member today. Welcome to another episode. And again, it's with Benjamin. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks, Alex. So how are you? You have a complex day today?
Actually, at the time, it's not that complex, but usually when we work, there's a lot of kind of shifting things around, isn't it? You have a couple of different projects. You have, things that move out, things that move in.
Always in.
And usually everything at the same time. Yeah. And then, these people need to go crazy to kind of still meet deadlines and, have work long hours, and everything becomes hectic. I was recently talking to someone, and she was kind of, it's so hectic. And, but I think if that is done, this database log is done, then it will get better. And I was thinking, didn't you tell me this the last 3 times we talked with each other? Mm-hmm. It never became really better. You see people in these organizations becoming kind of going crazy because, there's one deadline after the other. There's, one emergency after the other. And people are kind of firefighting all the time. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily firefighting. What I see more as a, let's say, like a constant threat is the complexity of the studies that we're working in. So it is not necessarily that we are not aware of things, or that, I mean, there's often something moving in, as I said, usually moving in rather than out, and that again is messing up the whole plan. Because you have usually quite a good plan, and overlapping maybe responsibilities or studies, and so it fits nicely, and as long as it fits, there's no need for any support or escalation, and everything is running smoothly. People are busy. It's not that they're not busy, or they're getting bored. It's just that they have a plan and everything works. But if one tiny piece falls apart, let it be timelines, or maybe something about unexpected data quality issues, anything that's messing around your plans, it may get up to firefighting, I agree, but also just purely to unexpected overload in or new tasks coming in that you haven't been planned in, you haven't been thinking about before.
Yeah. And these kind of little changes, if you have these complex systems where everything works at top speed and things, then the systems crash. I once had this when I was going to the PSI conference in Amsterdam, and I went by train, and the first train I had 11 minutes delay. Not a big thing if you think about a 3-hour train ride. Yeah. Unfortunately, I only had 10 minutes to switch the trains at that station. So, and then instead of having a 11 minutes delay, I had a 2-hour delay. Yeah, because then I needed to wait for the next train. And so this, if something, little goes wrong in complex systems, that can multiply quite a lot.
Yeah, and giving for the example of the trains, it's not that the system ideally doesn't work. So if there's nothing breaking down, if there's no, cow on the tracks or whatever, it's everything is going smoothly, it works. So it's well planned and it's well organized, and it's not that it could be probably room for improvement. And it's always funny if you, for example, go to Switzerland and they start apologizing for a 3 minutes delay, where you always think, coming from Germany, it's like, why, what exactly are you apologizing for? So it's kind of, it's their different system. It's different, but in generally it works. In general, but in that case, if it's 10 minutes, 11 minutes delay by 10 minutes gap that you usually had, it's breaking down.
Yeah, but it's also kind of, if you compare the Swiss train system with the German one is of course much more complex. Yeah, and so this increase in complexity means that there is much more things that can go wrong. Yeah, there's just much more kind of rooms for error. Yeah, and for things like, I don't know, a crash, an accident,
technical
problem, weather problems, whatsoever. There's kind of 1,000 things that can happen. And then these kind of delays add up. And the same thing happens at work in completely the same way. If you have lots of moving targets and everything is working together, and you have these different studies that influence each other, and the handovers, all the different people working on it, such overall study is complex, and the overall clinical development process is even more complex. So there's lots of moving targets. In terms of the German railway systems, that's actually an interesting thing, because there was a mathematician in Germany that looked into these type of complex systems and did more kind of research in it. And he discovered that when you have, a system and you try to kind of get it as efficient as possible, by, getting everything kind of to maximum capacity, there is something interesting happens. So that, up to 80%, 85%, small problems don't add up.
They don't interrupt it,
Yeah. But between 85 and 90%, something interesting happens. Any small problems then directly shoots the capacity of the system beyond 100%. Yeah, because then all these different things add up, like in my 2-hour delay thing with the ride to Amsterdam. One thing that fits to the next, and you get this kind of domino effect that's not stopped anymore. Yeah, and so same happens at work. If you full plan everybody to full capacity, you basically need to assume that everything works exactly like you have planned.
Did it ever work exactly like we have planned? And you see where we're getting to.
Yeah, of course, it never works like you planned. Yeah, so there's this famous quote by Moltke, a German general, who said, your plan of attack never survives the first contact with the major force of the enemy. Yeah, because then always, things change. And so planning is really, really important, but completely kind of be dependent on exactly implementing your plan leads to disaster.
Yeah, and this, you might be wondering why, if you say it adds up and will stress the system and even overcome the capacity of the system. So how do we then actually manage to do it? And you recall that we quite often think about the peaks that in our workload. And so we are in a kind of the lucky position, unlike the Deutsche Bahn or any other train, is that we have overcapacities, natural overcapacities, which is overtime usually, or maybe just the putting something aside, which is less important for the moment, and saying that is not as important, so we'll do this next week, and you see that this is leading to the next problem. But in that's the firefighting activities where we then start. But in reality, we are quite not completely comparable with a Bahn, with a train, because of the type of capacities that we have flexibility in. However, this is also only limited, because it's there's no unlimited overtime or no unlimited peak that we can work on. And everyone is expecting some peaks. So it's nothing that what we are talking about today is nothing surprising. So, I mean, everyone is doing this in a day-to-day business, kind of working on the things. So which may come up with a higher, on a higher peak than expected, or maybe a peak in general. So it's, as you said, it's nice that mathematician prove something at some point, and they might be right, but we all know it already. It's, it's not that it's nothing. We all know it already.
We all know it already, but the important point here is that we get into trouble if we plan from these kind of deadlines perspective only. Yeah. So kind of, okay, here are the different deadlines, and then we plan our capacity in such a way that we will be able to kind of just in time deliver to all these different deadlines. Yeah. If you think about the Eisenhower metrics of important versus urgent, you have these 4 different quadrants: important, but not urgent, urgent, but not important, urgent and important, yeah, and so on, yeah. And so, of course, you don't want to, well, you never work in these not urgent, not important things, yeah. If you work only on the things that are important and urgent, yeah, then you'll get into trouble. So I think you need to have kind of the capacity that you work quite a lot in the important, not yet urgent things. Yeah. And if you have that area, then you are in a really, really nice spot. Yeah. And so have an overall plan that works like this. And that also then allows you to, have this buffer, because you have this buffer basically in this urgent, important, not yet urgent things.
Yeah, and I think you also have to convince sometimes people or even companies to think about this system. Because the argument of saying, I plan in the buffer for things that we are not expecting is usually being pushed back and saying, well, then plan better, plan the unexpected. So because we cannot afford. So if you see that you plan in a gap of a day, everyone is saying, why didn't we the day? We would like to have it one day earlier. It's too important to wait for another day, just in case. And so, come back to the example of the mathematician, it is, that's one of the key roles of a statistician in general, to convince non-mathematician of problems that they see and the risks. And I think that is something we definitely need to pick up at some point and demonstrate, and giving the example of why we need to have this extra day. Or it is just the experience that, we've been through hundreds of studies and trials and deliveries and whatsoever, and none of them you can compare with another. None of them. So it's all different. All different challenges. There are overlaps, obviously, but it's in general, whatever is pushing you back in the delivery, it's something different and you have never experienced before. Otherwise, you would have thought of it. So otherwise, you would have planned it in.
Yeah. And I don't know, that's the nature of our work environment. Yeah, you have always kind of new people joining. You have new study design features. You have new or updated processes, or all these kind of other things that can happen. Yeah, like COVID, whatever. Yeah. So there's just plan for these unexpected things. Yeah. And then if you see that you still have time, you can work on the important, not yet urgent things. Yeah. And that will always help you to kind of get this stress out of the system, and will, make sure that you are satisfied with your work and you have less these heroic, we worked the complete weekend kind of thing to meet the deadline on Monday. Yeah. Which, we shouldn't, actually, honor that. This kind of business. That's actually bad management. If you need to do that on a continuous basis, then it's actually bad management.
Yeah. And also just a tip for proposing this is, to don't do this on an extra single day to give extra as a buffer. So plan it in every step of the timeline. So it's not very obvious. It may be a day longer, and it's kind of it's if you plan this too offensive or too open with the buffer, this is always falling back on the study team, saying, well, you're very unorganized if you plan in an extra day, so you should be better organized and plan. So that's why, but be realistic. Be realistic in a way. That is something that it's usually very, very nice and very, I love about people is that they're thinking very positive, and that's including myself. It is really that we think, well, yes, that should be manageable and we'll manage it. Don't worry. So it's kind of, being convinced that you do it. It's no, but just stop here. Yeah. It's a bias, exactly.
That's a bias. That is a clear bias. Yeah, that is, and it's well documented. We always overestimate, how fast we can be, how great we are. Yeah, in the short term. Yeah, in the long term, we usually underestimate. Yeah, so we overestimate what we can do in a day or in a week or things like that. Yeah, we underestimate what we can do in 3 years or 5 years. But as we plan in these days and weeks time frames, we usually overestimate. Yes, look at your to-do list that you write in the morning. Yeah. Do you always complete it? Yeah. So, no. And that's why, went back to, I want to just complete 3 really main important things to call this day a success. Yeah. Because otherwise you're always depressed. Yeah. So plan in your buffer. Yeah. Depending on the system that you work with, if I also worked in systems like with, critical chain management, where you actually have buffered and unbuffered timelines. If you need to kind of sandbag your timelines, do it. Yeah, because that will help you, and then you can, front load your work and see kind of where you can better manage things around, so that in most of the cases you don't need to go into this heroic last minute.
And also, involve your
fighting stuff.
Supervisor in some cases. But I know that especially in our business, that we often get pushback on suggested timelines for whatever reason. So maybe they're unrealistic, but they're sometimes just not understood correctly. And if you need support, talk to your supervisor, get people involved that act as I wouldn't even call it escalation, but just first point of escalation outside the study team. So where somebody more objective can give examples or justify timelines or just talk to the client on a different level. And that will help often, not necessarily, but that is something at least where you can work with and get a better, don't feel or don't let the pressure of individuals or, these clients or study teams destroy your plans if you plan in a buffer. So if you plan realistic, that's something. I know it's difficult. We are so time driven and any, all around the pharmaceutical industry with getting medication in a market or a publication out or whatsoever, it's all driven by timelines. So there's a pressure, no doubt. But still, it's better to have an extra day and make it that extra day rather than, having it a week delay because of unexpected things and then, people not being available in review, etc., and really having a big issue.
So I think that was a really, really important episode, and because it's coming up on a continuous basis. Yeah, it's nothing that's going to change. It's, you will always need to fight for it. Yeah, it's not like you once implement it and then it's done. It's something that you need to continuously work on, have in mind. Because the pressure will be always there to kind of shorten things. And whenever you plan, you might fall into this cognitive bias of planning for everything moves smoothly, which of course doesn't. So talk to you next time. Have a nice week.
Bye-bye.
This show was created in association with PSI. Thanks to Rain, who helps with the show in the background, and thank you for listening. Please tell others about this show if you like it. If you found this episode to be something you want to share with others so that they also plan buffer into their projects, into their daily actions, into their monthly actions, then share this episode with others. I would love to benefit from this learning for as many people as possible. Reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients. Just be an effective statistician.